Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing a quick video because I had this thought in my head about how shitty I feel when I find out people are just following along with the media or politicians or the corporations or whatever. I have to remind myself and check myself and realize that most people are hoodwinked into stuff. But one example that I do feel good about and feel like I could look back, you know, back in the early 2000s was something that happened that I questioned, and I questioned the response to. Now back then, the media was after people that questioned anything about this, and they, you know, talked about conspiracy theorists and, you know, people that wanted, terrorism, or people were supporting the terrorists, or you're either with us or you're with the terrorists, and, stuff like that. And Bush was a great president, and, what he was doing was right to get the terrorists and stuff. Now, ironically enough, only about 2 or 3 years later, the people that were supporting Bush, and many of the people, at least, a good proportion of them, started to question things and say, no, well, I guess the war in Iraq is wrong. It's like, you got hoodwinked into this shit. And now, people look back on that. Of course, there's this weird retconning of the Bush narrative, but that's not exactly to excuse what happened. Of course, people definitely don't look back on Iraq and say it was a just war or anything like that. But, it's like, oh, you were right about Bush, I guess. Oh, you were right. You were right. You were right. You were right. Yeah, I was saying that all along, saying that there was something up with that, that whole thing when the war in Iraq happened. And finally, the mainstream left caught up with that pretty quickly. Not pretty quickly, but relatively quickly, which is a good thing. So, and I get sad when I see people attack people for having a different opinion about different narratives being pushed. And some of them are my friends, or some are, that I know. Like, I saw someone on a certain website that I'm friends with on Facebook, and her comment was attacking conspiracy theories and stuff. And I'm just like, there's certain things you can attack for sure. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but there's no denying that there was a lot of stuff that happened there's a lot of stuff that happens, that could be rightfully attacked. Politicians could be attacked for what they do, how they respond to things, what they're pushing, So it's just, it saddens me, because I'm wondering what they think of me, what they think of my opinions. Like I'm just some crazy nut job that watches conspiracy videos or something like that. Well, I have thousands of books. Ooh, yeah. You know, hundreds of, I've read hundreds of books and hundreds of, let's see, try to see my book collection. I have way more than that, but I have thousands of books. I've read mainstream stuff. You talk about, you do research into things, you look into, like the Corbett report, for example. Like, I don't agree with a lot of his conclusions or a lot of what he's about in general, but he does good research and he compiles things together. I should say I don't agree with his conclusion necessarily about things, but what he's saying is not misinformation. It's not, it's just his conclusions that might be misinformation, or interpreted a certain way. I'm not saying misinformation. So before anybody attacks me for being this kind of like aspiring conspiracy nut or tinfoil hat wearing schmuck or something, maybe you can talk to me. If in the future, talk to me. Talk to me about things. Let's talk it out. I can tell you where I'm getting these sources from. They're legit or not. It's an interpretation of facts is really maybe the only difference that we have. The problem is when people don't have those facts. They don't look at, documents or information or even statistics, for Christ's sake. I mean, look at if you watch that new Bill Maher segment on the certain thing that's happening right now in the world, that came out like a week ago or something about, he said that like 42% of Democrats believe that, like, what was the statistic? Like, believe that believe that most people with a certain thing are hospitalized with that said thing, which I'm not going to mention because I'm trying not to. And whereas like Republicans like believe like the inverse of that, like that's no threat. Well, the truth is somewhere in between. And the fact is that are the Democrats conspiracy theorists or the Republicans conspiracy theorists? I don't, are they just nuts? They're interpreting things a different way. But in this case, who has the misinformation when they don't even know the fact, they don't even look at the statistics. The 42% of Democrats or whatever it was. They don't even look at the information itself, the actual stats from legitimate government websites. See, a lot of people like a certain provocateur that has his initials are AB on Twitter, who wrote kind of a weird anti-pot screed. I'll admit, I'm not going to say his name because who knows with the target words and stuff now. On Twitter, I'll just say it's BERENSON. This man did a series of booklets, but they were all from legitimate government sources. He has his own opinion about what these mean, but it's real evidence. But some of these people, like the Democrats that were polled about this going to the hospital for this certain ailment, probably didn't even look at the stats. I see Tinder profiles of like girls in their 20s and stuff that say they don't want to die and stuff. It's like, have you looked at how many, especially women in their 20s, that like svelte women I'm talking about? Have you looked at that? Have you looked at how many of them actually died from this? Probably not. It's like they just watch, CNN or see these like the headlines, the clickbait. So it's pretty stupid. So people on the left and right are misinformed, maybe not as equally in history. In history, I think the right a lot of the time is more misinformed about things, at least like the last, for a long time. I'm not saying now, but you got to look at these things in a nuanced manner. So when we're talking about, just looking at the time because I got to start work. When we're talking about these things, we have to have some perspective. But it disappoints me, to no end that a lot of the friends I've made over the years probably don't see me as someone with rational look at things. Which, why don't we talk about it? Why don't we debate? I'm going back on Facebook in a month, and a lot of my friends are on there that, buy into a lot of these narratives and stuff. It's not like I don't like believe, I question narratives. I'm not saying that I believe in the other side, but I just question things. Even that is problematic to people now, as these articles have come out about don't do your own research or, believe the media, don't fact check, don't, trust the fact checkers and all this stuff. It's like, come on, it's nonsense. So I do my own research, just like a lot of people should. And that's something that people should be encouraged to do. And critical thinking is not being encouraged anymore. That's the problem. So we have these bubbles like Matt Taibbi talks about, in his Hate Incorporated book, which I own, which is a good book. I highly recommend it. My second plug on this channel for it. So it's just disappointing, disheartening to think about how people probably think of me, you know, some people that know me probably think of me as some kind of conspiracy nut or some type of problematic individual in general. That's, that's, I'm not, I don't, it's not my concern what they think of me, but it does disappoint me and sadden me that, someone might call me intelligent and then they say, but he's, it's like, well, why don't we debate about these things? Why don't we talk about these things? I might not change your mind, but I might at least give you, a bearing on my point of view and where it comes from. So, but to conclude my whole thing with regards to me questioning narratives, 20 years ago, I did question the narrative, and I was proven to be right, at least in part, about the nefarious intent of the administration, which people didn't agree with me at first, and they were all gung-ho about Afghanistan and going there, and they were saying we should support our president no matter what. People on the left were saying this. Liberals were saying this. Some liberals, like the counterpunches of the world definitely weren't. The Noam Chomskys of the world definitely weren't. Of course, Noam Chomsky doesn't believe in a lot of conspiracy stuff, but point made is that people were questioning narratives back then. But what happened, regardless of how you think it happened or what happened, mine's a more, a little bit more moderate, nuanced position about how it happened and stuff. It's not really a laser beams from the moon or some shit, which I think some of those things are disinformation just to muddy the waters that are put out there, whether consciously or not. So I questioned the narrative back then, and I was vindicated. I was right. I was right back then, Am I right now questioning these things? I don't know. We'll have to see. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I own up to it. If I was wrong about a lot of the things I've questioned over the past year or year plus now, then I own it. I own being wrong, and that's fine. I own it. I was wrong about that particular subject or those particular subjects. Wasn't wrong about the hypocrisy. I wasn't wrong about a lot of that stuff. But I was definitely wrong. Maybe I was wrong about some of the stuff that I said and some of the stuff I questioned. Maybe. I'll own up to it. But will these people that question me or question the narratives that I'm into ever own up to their hypocrisy or their, if they were proven wrong, will they own up to it? I don't think so. And, I'm not trying to, virtue signal, but, I think that in a way that I can own up to these things, it makes me a better person than people that won't. So that's about all.